Don in London, hello. This video is all about the AA Big Book Chapter 7 from this, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a fellow in the fellowship. And it's good to be in the fellowship of AA for the following reasons, and I'm going to share the AA Preamble before I read Chapter 7. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. And the reason for doing these readings is very simple. Some people cannot get to meetings, some people don't find it easy to read the AA Big Book in early recovery because our brains are still a bit fried and nothing seems to make sense. It goes on to say, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. That's it. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. It's free, gratis. However, we are self-supporting through our own contributions. So some of us who have got a few pennies to spare put it in the hat, which covers rent and tea and coffee when we have group meetings. And there you see, what you see is what you get. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. So AA is free of all those things, but everybody who goes to AA has alliances with sects, denomination, politics, organisations and institutions. It's what we are. AA does not wish to engage in any controversy. In other words, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So, from the AA Big Book, this one, Chapter 7. Working with others. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. And an aside, I was very ill when I first got to AA. I went to one meeting and then it took 5 years to get to the next meeting. That's how ill I was. That's how defiant, stubborn, feeling like I needed to solve this on my own, and I couldn't. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And where I live, in London, UK, there are 700 meetings of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, every week. So 700 meetings times whatever number of people go, from 7 days a week, almost 14 hours a day, I would say, not quite 24 hours. But if we make friends in fellowship, we have 24/7 friendships which can help us. And I enjoy that. Although sometimes when the phone rings late at night, I am asleep. Continuing. Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Very true, because if we try and impose our views, our values or what we've learned on people, especially if they are alcoholic in addiction, the last thing they want to do is stop doing something which they feel, or I felt at the time, was the only way to live. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish, but it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticise. To be helpful is our only aim. When working with others is to be helpful, to share experience, strength and hope. Excuse me, I'm just getting things tidy so I can do this a little bit easier. Continuing. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. So in other words, if somebody's in no way going to be persuaded and has no ability, and I mean this, I'm talking about me when I say this, I had no ability to listen to what AA could do for me because I was isolated, alone, trying to stand on my own 2 feet and putting on a brave face. They should be patient. You may spoil a later opportunity. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they are dealing with a sick person. And I didn't want to be a sick person. I was pretending to be okay, putting on a brave face. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife, and vice versa. Wife with an alcoholic problem, maybe talk to the husband. Get an idea of his behaviour, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You needed this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned. So in other words, put ourselves in their shoes, try and see it from their point of view. Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it is better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval, often called a moment of clarity. Then let his family or a friend ask him if he wants to quit for good, and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship who, as part of their own recovery, try to help others and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you. If he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for an end of his drinking bout. You might place this book where he can see it, in the interval. Here no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over-anxious, for that might spoil matters. In other words, again, if we try and push people or impose something on them, if they are an alcoholic, like I was, or still am, even in recovery, I can be stubborn and defiant, and I need to find courage, faith and confidence in others to listen to their wisdom. Usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of the solution. And my personal experience of that was going to a psychiatrist via our National Health Service in the UK, and I said I just can't stop, no matter what I do, and they found me a place in a 3-week detox unit, which then led to the worst experience of my life, which was called rehab. But I was very sick, and I didn't know how ill I was, because I'd been drinking for 35 years, so I'd been coping with an impediment, that is, the impediment of not being able to see reality without a glass in hand, in the end, not all the time through those 35 years, but you know what, I don't know how I coped with life without it, and now I cope with life without it. Continuing, when your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure, and that's absolutely emphatically, it's emphatic, no pressure, because this has to be a free choice. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed, and the simple reason for that is we need a way out when we feel so bad. See your man alone, if possible. At first engage in general conversation. After a while turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. And, we don't go into a drunk-a-log, but we share just how horrible it was and what happened next. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralise or lecture. And the problem is, it's very easy for us, even in recovery, to start getting judgmental about those who cannot stop drinking, because we can forget that we couldn't stop drinking, and just how horrible it was, that we had to hide ourselves away. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his, and this is all about sharing experience, strength and hope. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, and I was baffled, beyond belief. How could I not stop? Why was I killing myself? How you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree, and that's when we stop for a while on willpower. And this is what's so important. Willpower will fail. And the good news in fellowship is we don't need to use willpower at all. Once we stop, it's about free choice after the first initial phase where it's very, very difficult to see an end in sight. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. If he is alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady, because it is a malady. It's an allergy as well. If we drink, we can't stop, and it's killing us. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. Don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it, and be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic, because we have to admit we are an alcoholic. I had to admit it and then find what acceptance was. I admitted it on my first visit, and then 5 years later I got to my second meeting because of my defiant stubbornness and the imposition of a program on me which I just really didn't want to do. So this is the difficulty. It's only if a person really, really feels they are an alcoholic that they start to relate, and it's quite overwhelming when this happens. Let him draw his own conclusion. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can, because sometimes they can. If he is not too alcoholic, that's what he said, that possibly he can if he's not too alcoholic, but insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. And for me, I had to really, really understand that it was an illness. It wasn't just me unable to use my willpower, because self-will failed. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your own personal experience. Explain that many are doomed who never realised their predicament. And this is very true, because hardened drinkers, as I thought I was, I didn't realise the dependence, and I didn't realise the addiction, and I didn't realise that I was shortening my life considerably, and that the whole world around me, or my world, had collapsed. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose, but you may talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. And this is it. From the problem of drinking is the solution of sobriety, which is the very last thing a hardened drinker can imagine doing. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is an alcoholic, so much the better. Even though your protégé may not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question if you will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. And for me, the spiritual feature of the program is to be in reality, to be able to cope with what's happening today, to live in the moment of now. That's just me. It goes on. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. And that's absolutely true, because as there are 6.5 billion people on the planet, each with an understanding of what is God or no God, they could be atheist, agnostic or believer, and depending on life experience and background and everything, the conception of God will be different in each person's mind, because we are unique and authentic, and we must never ever try and impose our understanding of what God might be, or my understanding. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles. And for me, when I was trying to understand what a higher power could be in my life, it took me ages, even in the program, even being sober. And my higher power at the beginning was the wisdom I was getting from other people. What I saw is what I got in meetings, and some people were on track in the solution, and some people were in the problem and still trying to cope with life. So the spiritual aspect of the program is the ability to cope with reality, and that's how it turned out for me. But that is just my understanding, nobody else's, although it might fit with some other people too. The main thing is that he'd be willing to believe and live by spiritual principles. So truth, love and wisdom are my dominant principles. Finding the truth, not my opinion. Love is how to love people and be loved back, which is very difficult if we really haven't understood what love is, and love keeps on changing all the time. And then the wisdom part for me is the wisdom of others. So if God works through people, all well and good. And sometimes people give us great wisdom, sharing their experiences, and some people give us the problems, and maybe we can help them. And it is always the newcomer who brings news of the malady or the allergy, and we need reminding as we go along in sobriety what it is. So it is all about helping others. For me, going on, when dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. There is no use arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which he may already be confused. And I remain confused. I could never define God. Nature, the universe, everything, providence, beyond my ability to define. But I can live quite comfortably with a higher power in my life. That is truth, love and wisdom. And that's me. That's just my personal view. So please don't take it on board. It's about finding your own spiritual way of living. Reality, I hope. Going on. Don't raise such issues no matter what your own convictions are. Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours, and I have to say that is true of anybody with a religious-based faith. I don't know enough to comment. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows, but he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of the truth. He may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action, which is what chapter 6 was all about, into action. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion, and I certainly couldn't. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do, absolutely true. But call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it or he would not drink. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts he knows so well. We represent no particular faith or denomination. We are dealing only with general principles common to most denominations. So when AA says it is not allied with any sect denomination, it's true. Everybody has their own belief system and their faith system, whatever it happens to be. Outline the program of action, explaining how you made a self-appraisal, how you straightened out your past, and why you are now endeavouring to be helpful to him. It is important for him to realise that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you are helping him. Make it plain he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. Suggest how important it is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. Make it clear that he is not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. And that's perfectly all right, because we share our experience, strength and hope, and it's not for us to try and make another person follow our path. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you might have helped him. If your talk has been sane, quiet and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. That is all to the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. And really, it's when we reach rock bottom that moment of clarity may be there. Or it may be that the moment of clarity comes a bit later. But when we actually face reality and actually say to ourselves, I am an alcoholic, that is admitting the reality of our situation. And as a prospect, I was a very poor listener and I was absolutely stubborn and defiant. So even me. The more hopeless he feels, the better. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions. Your candidate may give reasons why he not follow all of the program. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning which requires discussion with other people. Do not contradict such views. Tell him you once felt as he does, but you doubt whether you would have made such progress had you not taken action. And this is the point. It's all about action. On your first visit, tell him about the Fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him your copy of his book. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. If you do stay, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. Sometimes a new man is anxious to proceed at once, and you may be tempted to let him do so. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later, he is likely to say you rushed him. You will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusade or reform. Never talk down to an alcoholic from any moral or spiritual hilltop. And I'm really pleased about that, because I haven't got a moral or spiritual hilltop. I'm just a human being trying to find the truth of now. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for inspection. Show him how they worked with you. Offer him friendship and fellowship. Tell him that if he wants to get well, you will do anything to help. If he is not interested in your solution, if he expects you to act only as a banker for his financial difficulties or a nurse for his sprees, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind. This he may do after he gets hurt some more. And the problem for us alcoholics, or for me as an alcoholic, was I kept on hurting myself. It's called self-harm. And one of the things I know, when I was hurt, I felt hurt, and I hurt other people by my attitude and behaviour, because I had no value of self left. I had no faith, no courage, no confidence, and I put up a wall around me because I was absolutely struck and paralysed by fear of everything. the telephone, the door knocking, a letter dropping through, closing the curtains, and frightened. That was me, and that's what I got to, which is part of my story. If he thinks he can do the job in some other way, or prefers some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his own conscience. We have no monopoly on God. We merely have an approach that worked with us. But point out that we alcoholics have much in common, and that you would like, in any case, to be friendly, and then let it go at that. Because there is no point, absolutely no point, in trying to... We can't promote it. If we say AA can fix you, and this is the thing about Tradition 11, which is, or rather Tradition 12, it's about attraction, not promotion. Attraction is about what you see is what you get. That's how we represent ourselves if we're talking to an alcoholic in active addiction. It's what you see is what you get, rather than say, I've come here to fix you, because actually nobody can fix anyone. Although some people would like to think they can, and they're often from the caring professions, because we want to put them back in charge. Or I think and feel that the therapeutic processes I used to have was always about keeping the person in charge of whatever was happening, rather than understanding that life is better interdependent in many ways. No matter what rank or particular status we may have, we are all interdependent, and that's how it works in fellowship. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. In other words, we keep on sharing the message of experience, strength and hope wherever we find we are able to do it comfortably without preaching. And ongoing, it says, you are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. And that's good, because it actually levels us again. If we thought we could help everyone all the time, we would elevate ourselves above everybody else. And the truth is, we have a one-day program, and we're only good for one day, so we are all equal. Even though we may be a newcomer, or somebody who's been around a while, we all live in this one day. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. To spend too much time on any one situation is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. One of our fellowship failed entirely with his first half-dozen prospects. He often says that if he had continued to work on them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered of their chance. And one of the things I've learned over the years, is if a person doesn't relate to what we have, there's absolutely no point in trying to push them in any direction. I know I couldn't be pushed in any direction, and I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I know sometimes I'm not on top of my game, if you like. I'm not on top form. So all sorts of factors come into it. But the most important factor, of course, is to be able to share a message equally to another person. And if another person cannot listen for whatever reason, that's okay. It's just where they are right now. Let them be themselves. That's how it has to happen. Ongoing, suppose now you are making your second visit to a man. He has read this volume and says he is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you are available if he wishes to make a decision, and tell his story. But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else, because that's the most important thing. There are plenty of people about in recovery, and in meetings, like I say, there's 700 around where I live, 700 a week. There's plenty of other people who will no doubt be far better able to relate. Thank goodness. He may be broken homeless, which I was. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job, or give them a little financial assistance, but you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. And what I've learned over the years is a helping hand with some food, a helping hand with where to get help around homelessness. But one of those things I found desperately hard. Before I got to AA, I was very generous to people I met on the street, homeless people. And I never thought I would be one myself, and that I would run away from family, friends, community, and be homeless. It was a terrible, horrible ordeal, and I pretended all that time to be okay. But it was awful. Thank goodness for me it didn't last long. But when I meet a homeless person who is coming into the meetings, I don't say, do you want somewhere to live? And can I show you how I did it? If a person asks for help, and we have some answers which may help them, then we share it. Perhaps you will want to take the man into your own home for a few days, but be sure you use your discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family, and that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections or shelter, because AA is for sobriety. That's what it is. It's for how to get sober, and part of getting sober is how to find out what is possible and what is not possible around money, home and everything else. Permit that, and you only harm him. You will be making it impossible for him to be You're making it possible for him to be insincere. You may be aiding his destruction rather than his recovery. And that thing of are we doing good, or are we being a do-gooder? Somebody who does good is not enabling a person to fall further and keep on slipping and sliding. But doing the good thing is laying out the facts, and then what can be done, what is possible and what is not possible. It's a very hard one, that, and I found it desperately difficult. And it will always be desperately difficult. There is only so much one person can do, which is why we have fellowship. Continuing. Never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to act Good Samaritan every day if need be. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, and that is very true. Great interference with your pleasures, that is very true too. Interruptions to your business, it doesn't actually apply to me. It may mean sharing your money and your home, counselling, frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails and asylums. And I must admit, I haven't done much of that, but I have done some of it, and it's desperately, desperately difficult to maintain one's own sobriety unless we are going to meetings and keeping in touch with people around us, not sharing specifics of another person's business, but actually saying, I need to lean on the fellowship, and this is how it works for me. I lean on the many and not just one person, or I drag them down too. Your telephone may jangle at any time of the day or night. Your wife may sometimes say she's neglected. I haven't got a wife, unfortunately. But if I did have a wife, I think I would take account of what she needs as well as what other people need. I wouldn't put them all exactly in the same place. We can do what we can do. A drunk may smash the furniture in your home or burn a mattress. You may have to fight with him if he is violent. Sometimes you will have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. Occasionally you will have to meet such conditions. And I remember when I was homeless and I was put in a hostel and then put in very difficult accommodation, and people had my telephone number, and very strange things happened around their relationships where they ran off and left people, and I was left on one occasion walking around an area of London with the police trying to find somebody who had overdosed, and it was very, very difficult indeed. The outcome was good on that occasion, but on some occasions it's been awful, where people have died. We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for a long time, and actually I don't do that. It is not good for him, and it sometimes creates serious complications in a family. And the reason why I don't do it is I have medical issues, and I have to keep the place clean and hygienic, and I cannot be in the company of another person. I'm not set up for it. But there are many ways to help and make sure a person can get a roof over their heads. There are places if a person wants to come off the streets, and eventually I did myself. Though an alcoholic doesn't respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. You should continue to be friendly to them. The family should be offered your way of life. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there is a much better chance that the head of the family will recover, and even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. For the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. The men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong track. Yet we do go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things, when such an action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think it is not. And, my sister saved my life by her generosity and kept me somewhere safe for a while, even though I couldn't stop drinking, and even though it was desperately sad. And I'd been in hospital, intensive care and all the rest of it, and had a priest come to give me the last rites, and I made light of it at the time, but I just didn't see the seriousness of it, and that was before detox, rehab, homelessness. But I have extreme gratitude, because without my sister I would have died at that time. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. That often makes the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, and in the fellowship it's all about unity, service and recovery. On the service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. He clamours for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife. We simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God, or your understanding of a higher power. So truth, love and wisdom. I had to learn that for me this is, truth, love and wisdom were the only ways forward for me. Not my opinion, not my need for money, not my need for a roof over my head. The truth is, I needed to get sober so life could start and I could get back into a solution. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trust in God and clean house. And that was let go, let God. Let go, let good conscience. Let go, let the truth in, find love and wisdom of others. And the cleaning house bit is really important. What got us to where we were? The assets we had, the liabilities we had, a personal appraisal. Now, the domestic problem. There may be divorce, separation, or just strained relations. When your prospect made such reparation as he can to his family, and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living, he should proceed to put those principles into action at home. That is, if he is lucky enough to have a home. Though his family be at fault in many respects, he should not be concerned about that. He should concentrate on his own spiritual demonstration. In other words, we need to keep on emphasizing, but not pressing a person into action. It is all about action. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. If we judge others, then goodness me, do they judge us. In many homes this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are to be expected. If persisted if persisted in for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. The most incompatible people discover they have a basic basis upon which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them, because often what we manifest in ourselves is actually what we pass on to those around us. So our temperament changes with alcohol. Selfishness, self-seeking, self-obsession, self-will, judging the world as the world is judging us by what we do. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. These can be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness. In other words, we've got to stop the blame game. And that's what our step 10 is all about in the programme. After they have seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. If they do, and it's their choice. These things will come to pass naturally in good time, and in good time provided, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Of course, we all fall much below this standard many times, but we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree. So the worst thing that can happen is we get resentful, and resentments are slips under construction, or expectations become resentments, and then we're on the way to a drink. If there be divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure of his recovery. The wife should be fully understand his new way of life. If their old relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis, since the former did not work. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. Sometimes it is to the best interests of all concerned that a couple remain apart. Obviously no rule can be laid down, because it's got to be a choice based on truth. Let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. When the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties. Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. And that's just life as well. People find that after a while maybe they weren't right for each other, because we get to know each other or we grow apart. We just keep on growing. And if we're sober, we may be growing closer and love a person more. Somebody said there's still time for me, but I'm getting a bit long in the tooth. Anyway, remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. And for me that is leaning on fellowship, the wisdom that resides in there about sobriety, and then leaning on my faith in nature and providence. Then that's just me. We have seen men get well whose families have not returned at all. We've seen others slip when the family came back too soon, because there is an enormous pressure in trying to understand life generally when we're sober. We have to develop new skills of living. But we don't do it overnight, and that's the whole point. We just do it gradually, day by day. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. And for me that's truth, love and wisdom. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realise that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. So, in other words, we had a narrow view as an alcoholic of making the world our way, rather than seeing the world as it is, with the broader picture so vast, and the prospects of change of everything, stopping the old ordeals and starting the new solutions. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. Absolutely true, because my world had shrunk to the size of my head and what was in it, and all there was in there was fear, and a lot of intellect which was useless to me. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. Absolutely. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do, but urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight, especially if we have a thing about being good, or we know better, or we feel we know better than everybody else. And it takes a long time to realise we don't know any better than anybody else in any given day. And we have 5 senses which are really important to keep on using them. You should point out his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. And the truth is, if we are sober, we do have a chance to let our senses come back to us. The skill of listening to the inner voice inside us, and listening to the wisdom of others, and then putting things into action. Gentle experience growing. If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, you see, for me, I live on my own. I have type 1 diabetes, courtesy of living longer and having a virus which gave it to me, not connected with my drinking. And I'm smiling about that, because if I had kept on drinking, I wouldn't have got diabetes, and I wouldn't have had the other clinical conditions identified either. So my domestic situation is wonderful. I know what's wrong with, on a daily basis, I know what's wrong with me. But it's all made possible by the fellowship, by keeping me sober, leaning on the greater number. Tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. In this way you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. And what I can say of my past relationships with women in my life I loved dearly, I suppose, the only way I could. I just loved them. They are friends, and I'm really pleased to say that forgiveness has been given both ways round. And I'm humbled by that, because at the time either I left or they left, because it was just impossible. Like for like sometimes. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show movies which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so. Now, in early days, I did avoid all those things, and it was very difficult. And I lived in meetings probably for 90 days, and thereafter I stayed at a meeting a day, because it really helped me transform into a new way of living. It allowed me to grow. So I don't actually want to go to a pub. I don't enjoy seeing people get drunk, and I don't enjoy long time in a place where I can't make an easy exit and go home. That's not because I despise people who drink. Most people who drink are all right, but 1 in 13 in the UK adult population have a drink dependence problem, according to the National Health Service. So I can't judge anybody, because I took it to the very final days. Going on, we meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. That is, we're still stuck in the problem. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be some place like the Greenland ice cap, or even there an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. Yeah, wherever we are, if we are in the problem and the addiction, we'll find alcohol. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain ordinary whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we have made an important qualification. Therefore ask on each occasion, have I any good social, business or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? And last Christmas I went to Christmas dinner with my family in my sister's house. My auntie and mum were there, and they fancied a bit of wine. I opened it for them and poured it out for them into glasses. And that was the nearest in 7 years I'd actually come to looking at wine at the end of my arm, in my hand, passing it over to another person. And it did disturb me. It was Christmas Day, and fortunately for me there is a meeting all day long in Chelsea where I live on Christmas Day. So I went to the meeting and said, I found this disturbing. It's the first time I've done it in 7 years. It didn't feel right. So there you go. I don't really feel good opening wine for other people. It's too easy and too near. I just don't like it. For me. If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. And this also depends on our own personal circumstances, whether things are going too well, and if you're joyful, and what would one drink do, or in a place of disaster, where we just want to blot it out and find oblivion again. Be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start, and that your motive in going is thoroughly good, to the good of what is good for life and in that moment. Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you'd better work with another alcoholic instead. So if you don't feel right about going to some place, the worst thing is to try and endure something which is really going to be bad for you, because it just sets off all those old thoughts of how it used to be before addiction. Why sit with a long face in places where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. If a business occasion, go and attend your business enthusiastically. If you are with a person who wants to eat in a bar, by all means go along. Your friends know they are not to change their habits on your account. In other words, leave people to do what they do. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. Now you are getting into a social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor. Your job now is to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. I have, and the person was already dead, unfortunately. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will help you keep you unharmed. But I did go to a meeting pretty much for 3 or 4 days, as much as I could. Not to speak about it, but just to settle back. Because nasty shocks are nasty shocks. Many of us keep liquor in our homes. I don't. We often need it to carry green recruits through a severe hangover. That's never happened for me. Some of us still serve it to our friends, provided they are not alcoholic. Well, most of my friends don't drink these days. But some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question, because it is a personal thing. I prefer not to have alcohol in my home, in any shape or form. Anyway, that's me. We feel that each family, in the light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. And it did serve me well for many years, kept me going on things which were not good for me. But I didn't know that, and the good news is, coming out of the problem into the solution, I have the courage, faith and confidence to keep on changing my attitudes and behaviour as best I can. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful to anyone. Every new alcoholic looks for this spirit amongst us, and is immensely relieved when he finds we are not witch burners. We're not firebrands, we're just humans. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have been saved had it not been for such stupidity. Absolutely. And if you're thinking or living through into the solution, it was stupid what we did, but we didn't know it. We should not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. I loved it and then hated it, and I couldn't stop, and it was self-loathing and self-hatred, my inner core taken away from me. Someday we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem, but we shall be of little use in our attitude if one is one of bitterness or of hostility. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. That's it. We stopped fighting anybody or anything and look for the free choices around reality. We have to. And that's the end of the chapter. Working with others. And my word, it's taken me a long time to go through it with my asides. But it is about experience, strength and hope. And in my experience in early days, I stuck with a group of people who were pretty much the same length of sobriety as me, and listened to the wiser people who've been around a long time, men and women who just kept with the program. They call it trudging the road of happy destiny, or just trudging the road of destiny. It's nature, providence, destiny. It's about what are the choices today based on what I know. So for me, in the morning, I always say to myself, step 1, I am powerless over alcohol, and if I took a drink, life would get unmanageable again. Step 2, came to believe that a higher power could restore me to sanity, and the higher power for me was AA to start with, and has developed into a concept of God, which is the absolute truth of now, love and wisdom gained from experience and mostly from other people. And step 3, let go and let God help me. Let go and let good started the process going, which is to be able to listen to the world and what's going on, locally and distantly. And then there is a pledge that we have in AA. This is part of my morning meditations. I am responsible when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there, and for that I am responsible as best I can with the assets and liabilities or my capacity on a daily basis. Some days I may be up to it, and given the medical conditions I have, some days I'm not up to it, so I have to take care of myself so I may be helpful to other people. And at the end of those meditations, they're very quick medications then, prayer and meditation in the morning. I always say the Serenity Prayer, as it is a prayer and it is also a meditation to what I can and cannot do on a daily basis, and a reminder to myself that I'm not in charge of anything except the best choice based on wisdom, either learned or coming from others. And for me, God, the inner voice of conscience, and the next right thing is all part of the Serenity Prayer. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's not about expectations, dear God help me get what I want. It's actually this, the Serenity Prayer to God of good conscience. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference is just for today.